Welcome back to It's a Tool Thing. Today I wanted to talk about electrical wiring tools. This is just a small fraction, probably less than a quarter of all of them that I own. But I want to talk about some of the positives and negatives and the ones that I prefer out of all of these here. We'll start off here with strippers. I've got these here. I've had these for a little while. I think I had them on one of my tool haul videos. Haven't really used them too much. I've used them in versions of these in the past, and I'm not a big fan of them. Just not my kind of speed. There's nothing wrong with them. They just seem to be a little bulky for what they are. Next one's here is a pair of the sliding type. Another one of those things that I don't tend to use on a daily basis, but there are those rare occasions where you just don't have any room and be able to stick it in that wire and pull it out. Makes the right tool for the job. As you can see, there's not a whole bunch of wear on it because this usually sits in my shop wiring box, which is a old style taco box. One of these days I'm going to get a video up on it that I modified the box drawers, and I just use it for wiring for extra accessories and my power probe and electrical stuff and that kind of thing. But like I said, those aren't my favorite. What I prefer, and these are just a couple of them, actually not even the ones I have in the shop. I think the ones I have in the shop are a pair of Blue Point. I've actually had those warrantied out once or twice. These are the kind I prefer. They seem to work pretty good. They get into pretty tight places. And I use the heck out of this pair in particular in the shop truck. That's my go-to pair. These other ones are spares. I always like to have at least one or two spares of everything, especially in the shop truck of things I use a lot. Because if I misplace one, I got to get the job done. And then I just use a pair of side cutters most of the time for cutting the wires to length and whatnot. I like these curved jaw ones. I do have some of the snap-on ones or just the regular flat. But I tend to prefer these curved ones. I got quite a few pairs of these. I got some Mac ones. I don't even know what brand. These appear to be Cornwells. These are the ones I use in my daily kit. And then I've got this small pair of crimpers. I purchased these used quite a few years ago, lightly used at that. And I can't say I ever really use them. Another one of those ones that sits in my toolbox at work, wiring cart, and just kind of hangs out. It actually is a pretty good idea. It's got the strippers built in the style I like, and then a dink style, as I refer to it, crimper up here, and then see if I can get it to focus. If I get my fingers back there, there we go. It's got the dink style and then the insulated style crimp, and I'm sure they probably work fine. These do have a little bit of flex in the handles. Some of the better ones, one of the guys that works has a pair of Mac ones. They look pretty much identical. The handles are a little thicker, and they don't have that flex in the handle. And then over here, these are my go-to in the shop truck. The universal style. These are actually Macs, if I remember correctly. I probably purchased these over 15 years ago. They've been a good pair of pliers. They work well for your standard crimps. They are the pivoting style, so they don't make the prettiest crimps, but they are secure and they do work well. Like I said, those are my go-to for most of the crimp styles. This pair here is actually a pair that I picked up. Same idea, but it actually goes even smaller gauge than it goes to, it looks like 28 is the low side. I picked these up. Most of the stuff I do doesn't get under 20. But for a couple bucks, I figured I'd have a pair for that day I need them. These here, the orange pair is a pair I keep in the shop truck, carry tote, and the same idea. But I do prefer these style with the jaws that have the scissor style action. They do a better looking crimp. I wouldn't say they're any functionally better, but they do look slightly better because you get a nice square push. And this pair here, like I said, they pretty much hang out. I tend to use those Mac ones just because I'm so used to using them, which is kind of interesting because this next pair here is my go-to set in the shop. and I believe I bought these used, but I believe these are Napa. I could be wrong, but Napa definitely sells these same ones, and they've got that scissor style action, so they keep nice and square, and they do make a little nicer crimp. This pair here, I've kind of squeezed the ever bejesus out of the handles and bent them in a little bit, but over the years. But they've been an excellent pair. I highly recommend you get a pair of these universal style crimpers. Next here is a modification that I like to make. I really do like these Thomas & Betts style crimpers. I have a couple pairs of these, modified and unmodified. These crimpers should look pretty much like this with a pair of cutters on the end. But I find that those cutters being on the end are useful because you have your cutters handy, you don't have to have another tool. But when you're trying to crimp other wires around other wires, it's just too easy to nick them. I do keep a regular pair on hand. This is actually a pair of Snap-on ones that I actually purchased in this condition for a really good price. I've got several pairs of them, but the handles on these got melted to bejesus at some point. Like I said on these here, this is the Thomas & Betts style, and they use what I call a double dink. They have a smaller and then a larger dink for the connectors that are natural without the heat shrink on them, and then I put the heat shrink over top of them and melt it down. We buy the heat shrink in sticks, and I find that you get a better crimp with these style, and then when you put the other piece over and shrink it down, you get a nice seal. Whereas when they come pre-heat shrunk, and that's where I would use this pair, I get the bullet style connectors loose like that. Some of the other ones I don't have. This pair is basically the same idea, except for it has just the one dink, the smaller one, and then it's got for the style with the heat shrink already on it. And I made that same modification here where I cut the end off and then beveled it. Like I said, I find that really handy doing crimps. I got connectors, 80 plus terminals, all side by side, not a lot of room. I had a few instances where it was an issue with these styles, so one day I was like, heck, I'm just going to cut these things down. I've been so happy with that I do it to, I've got a set in this shop truck kit and a set in the toolbox at the shop. And then some of these here, I've got several pairs. In fact, I think that red handle pair is actually a pair of Snap-on ones too. But I had multiple pairs, and I get them at a good price, usually under $10 or so, which is I consider a phenomenal deal for a quality pair of pliers. And I can't see how I'd ever break them. I mean, I did cut them, so the warranty's gone on them. Like I said, this is my backup pair. And then I have a pair of bent ones. I ended up finding these handles are in way better shape, but they're the angle ones, and it's not anything I've ever actually used, and I haven't cut the ends off of these because I haven't really used them. But I figured there's going to be that day where you're going to be in a tight place, and that's going to be the pair I need. The next item here, I recommend everybody pick up a pair of these. I actually got these on eBay. I've got a set in here and then a set in my toolbox at the shop. But they have these little hooks on the end, and they work really good for, in particular, as I refer to them as butterfly zip ties that tie two hoses together. You can get them really tight, and they're really hard to cut without damaging either the wiring or the hose. And these little hooks right here gets up underneath that ledge, and they do an excellent job of cutting those zip ties off. They'll work on regular zip ties also. I try to be real careful with them and not use them on anything that I think will hurt them. I did actually purchase these new, like I said, off eBay. I think they were somewhere around $25 a pair. I don't know if we can see a name here or not. I think it's ACT or something like that. ATC. Or excuse me, ACT. Is the brand name on these. But like I said, I highly recommend everybody get a pair of these. They work excellent. And then a hack that one of the other guys at the shop taught me. This is actually a special tool, not for wiring, but for what they call shrink clamps. I don't know how common they are anymore or in automotive, but instead of having a hose clamp, they're a frozen ring, and you stick them on there, and just getting up to ambient temperature causes them to contract and seal up the hose. And these are actually for those to cut them off without damaging the hose in theory. They don't work perfect every time, but they actually work pretty good on those butterfly style clamps also. There's not much of a ledge there. A little more bulky, but another good investment. That was I believe I got those off of eBay also. These here I bought used off of eBay, and they call these Cannon plug. These are, I believe, Blue Point, if I remember right. I know Blue Point makes them if this set isn't. But they're soft jaw Cannon plug style connector removers, and they work really good for those Cannon plugs that are really tight or in awkward situations. Some of our newer harnesses come with plastic dogs instead of steel dogs, and they are really tight. I mean, it's a two-hand, and you really got to crank down to get them to lock, and sometimes you can't get two hands in there. These will, with these soft jaws, you can grip onto those pretty good, and they are replaceable. And either lock or unlock them. Once you lock those plastic lug style, the old metal ones were round, and the new ones are kind of teardrop shaped. So after you unlock them and lock them a few times, they start to slip over just a little bit, and they're easier to lock and unlock. But the first time or two is usually a struggle. Or, like I said, if you have a scenario where you can only get one hand in, so you can't hold both sides really secure, these are a lifesaver. I keep these in the shop truck. I only have one set. One of these days I'll find a second pair at a good price and snag them, but when I bought these, they only had one pair used, so I just grabbed them. And it's not something you need every day. Anything like that where I think I'm going to use them in the shop truck and in the shop, I keep them in the shop truck and then just transport them in the shop for those rare occasions I need them. Next here, this is an actual specialty J-tool crimper for doing those same terminals the Universal one does. A particular terminal, to be honest. I don't remember which one. Appears to be a round style, probably a WTEC 3 main transmission connector for the computer. But these are good pliers. I don't tend to use them. I believe these are actually a shop provided pair. But these are an actual, they're pretty nice in the respect that you get a real consistent crimp with them. They actually lock the connector in with this little lever here, and then you can hold the wire in there and you know, ratchets down to full crimp. Like I said, I tend to just use the universal ones. Just got to be careful when you use universal ones, because sometimes they're not exactly right or perfectly designed for that particular application. This pair I was actually received as a gift. It's similar to the other pair, but this is actually made for the type of connectors that have the rubber seal on the back that you crimp. So it has these circles. I don't tend to use them. I've actually found a way of just using the ends of my strippers, and I get those crimped over pretty well. You're just trying to hold that seal on there for when you slide it into the body before you put the rear lock on. These are the ones I keep in the shop. These are the set I keep in the shop truck. Another J-tool. This one's actually mine though. Like I said, not another tool I use very often, but they come in handy on occasion. And then we get to the last couple here. Slide them over into view. These are just a regular insulated style connectors. I actually took the ratchet out of these for some reason. I don't even remember why. I had some kind of plan and it didn't work out. But they just do the regular red, blue, and yellow style insulated connectors. Don't tend to use them a lot. Like I said, I prefer the other style. I picked up this set. This is also another Thomas & Betts set. Another tool I don't use very often. But this one here, the main reason I got it is it does the small ones, but it also goes up to this really larger one, which isn't something I need very often, but on a rare occasion I like to be prepared. Nice pair of crimpers though. Pretty bulky. Anytime you get these universal style ones like this, they do get very bulky. And then these two crimpers here are the same style, round bullet style connectors with the cylindrical crimps. This one here is actually missing the stop. I'm assuming that's supposed to be here. To be honest, I'm not positive if it actually came with one. And it works just fine. You just have to position that and then start to draw it up, and then put your wire in and make the final crimp. This one here, it's a really expensive crimper. But it does the same exact thing there with the round style connectors, but it has the adjustable depth gauge, which you can adjust for the terminal when you put it in there, so it makes it a little easier to stick it in. You adjust that collar up, and then you can crimp multiples up quickly and easily. Very nice crimps. I actually prefer these style of round crimps, other than having to have a special tool. They make the same connector now with a flat crimp, and you have to use a release tool from the back, and they tend to get caught on the edges of the crimp. Where these here, they would slide over because it was a round crimp in the rear too. And so I do prefer these style if I can get them, but the terminals are getting a little harder to find these days. So that's kind of an overview of the different kinds of crimpers I use and which ones I prefer. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.